Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports, and we have even more 2025 NBA Draft Night trades to discuss in today's video. Of course, a lot of work goes into these videos, so I hope you guys do enjoy. If you do, make sure to smash that like and subscribe for more NBA content. And when it comes to the video preview here, in today's video, I do have 7 trade frameworks that we could potentially see go down on draft night. Now remember, the key word in that sentence is frameworks. This is not the finalized deal. This is not all the small little pieces that could be in a trade. For example, I don't have a ton of second round picks involved in these deals. There are some things that are lacking in terms of what the overall compensation could be. Some swap rights, for example. These are kind of the beginning packages, beginning frameworks for conversations between teams. And you might argue, well, this team needs a little bit more, or maybe they wouldn't give up quite this much. That's where the teams could have those discussions as well. It's just meant to be ideas that we're talking through kind of as we go throughout this video. Some blockbuster trades in this one, including some big-time players. Then we also have a few strong moves on the margins as well. Of course, I do think when you look at rotations, players 1 through 9, 1 through 10 in a rotation throughout an 82-game season and throughout a strenuous playoffs can be very, very important. So even if it's a role player, it can be very impactful come playoff time and throughout the course of a long regular season. And there are a couple draft pick only trades in this video as well. So I think we're kind of hitting all of the different kinds of ideas and topics in this video. So I'm very, very excited for it. Let's not waste any more time and jump into trade framework number 1. And it is a deal between the Brooklyn Nets and Houston Rockets. There are a lot of reports and rumors right now kind of highlighting the Brooklyn Nets as a team to watch for in a potential move up on draft night back into the lottery. The Nets have 4 first-round picks and a high second-round pick at number 36 in this year's draft. They have a ton of flexibility this offseason. I have a Brooklyn Nets offseason preview on the channel that just came out recently. I definitely recommend checking that out. But the Nets, I think, are one of the teams to watch this offseason in a big way because they have veteran players they could trade away, like Cam Johnson in this deal. They have the pathway to improve their roster if they want to pursue something like Giannis Antetokounmpo, or they could stick and pick and then also use their cap space to go sign guys in free agency. A lot of different optionality. In this one, I wanted to talk about them as a team, as a seller. Specifically trading Cam Johnson to a contending team, the Houston Rockets, a team that badly needs more three-point shooting, but they don't want to jeopardize their overall team context too much to bring in three-point shooting. I think Cam Johnson can really fit like a glove into the way that the Rockets play, playing off of the spacing, playing off the catch, attacking closeouts, driving the basketball, still being a competitive defender, albeit probably not as great as Dillon Brooks at the point of attack defensively. The Rockets already have the infrastructure around Cam Johnson with elite point of attack defenders in Tari Eason, Amen Thompson. They have guys who can just flat out get after it. Very good context of team size as well. They get on the glass well, and I think Cam Johnson could be one of the finishing touches on this roster, which is what makes him worth Dillon Brooks and the 10th overall pick. And in return, not only do the Rockets get Cam Johnson, they also get 2 later first-round picks at number 26 and 27 in this year's draft, which would give them a couple of stabs at other pieces, or they could try and package these picks and move them in a different deal on draft night as well. I think all things considered here, though, for Brooklyn, a team that has 5 picks coming into the draft, moving picks 26 and 27 all the way up to pick number 10 just completely changes the trajectory of their draft. They would then have picks 8, 10, and 19 in the first round. Looking at 3 top 20 picks, that's a very, very strong haul for a team in Brooklyn that is still hunting for top-end talent and franchise cornerstone pieces. Having a pick at 10 gives them an extra swing in the lottery, so to speak. So I think for the Nets, this does make a good deal of sense. I do think Dillon Brooks can still be an impact contributor for them as well if they want to stay competitive or try and improve their roster on the fly with some of these picks. We've seen how positive of a veteran leader Dillon Brooks can be for teams. Thinking to his value he's brought to Houston the last couple of seasons, it's been immeasurable at times. So I do think the Rockets are in a spot where moving on from Brooks could make some sense with a significant skill set advantage here, moving to Cam Johnson, who's just a better shooter, better play finisher, more connective offensive piece in general. And the Nets, you're striking gold here, getting a top 10 pick in this year's draft. It's a very strong draft class, especially in that lottery realm. And I think adding that into your other collection of pieces you already have in terms of draft capital, especially pick number 8. The Nets have 2 swings in the top 10 this year as a result, which would be quite strong. And the Rockets, well, yes, Cam Johnson's a bit older. People will say, well, he's just a role player, this, that, or the other thing. This is really a solidifying piece onto their roster. If they had Cam Johnson in the first round against Golden State, they would have beat Golden State. They would have beat them. And for Rockets fans who are going to be saying, oh, well, we don't want to give up pick 10 for Cam Johnson. Well, if you want to win playoff series, it's something worth considering. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is if the Rockets don't take this deal, oh no. I still think the upside for Houston moving forward is very, very high. I really love the direction of that team and organization. I think they've made a lot of smart moves, and if they do stick at 10 and pick, they're going to probably get a prospect who can play for them down the road. But if the Rockets are looking to start opening that window immediately, Cam Johnson is just a much more playoff-ready performer at this point in time than whoever the Rockets would likely select at 10, especially for Ime Udoka. We're not sure if those young guys are even going to get minutes right away. Cam Johnson kind of accelerates the direction of this team and helps them ASAP moving forward. Moving on to trade framework number 2, it is a deal between the Dallas Mavericks and Chicago Bulls, and this is a deal for one of those role players, someone who, unfortunately, for a majority of his career has not been able to stay healthy in Lonzo Ball. But when he has been on the court, especially for Chicago, he has been extremely productive and impactful. Now, the box score stats don't really, I think, suggest the actual productivity of his play on the court. And for the Mavericks specifically, a team that is trying to fill a hole at the point guard spot with Kyrie Irving out, this is the kind of deal that makes sense for Dallas. They can afford Lonzo Ball. This would still keep them below that first apron threshold, which is really important for them. They could make this trade Caleb Martin, trade a future second-round pick, and bring in Lonzo Ball. And I think for the Bulls specifically, the market for Lonzo Ball just quite frankly isn't that strong. They got him on a favorable extension, 2 years, $20 million, $10 million annually is not bad at all for Lonzo. And I think Dallas is a team that could really look to make that patchwork, right? You know, you might argue that some other team might be willing to give up a little bit more for Lonzo, but I think all things considered here, you're not going to get a really rich package for Lonzo Ball. He's a good player. I just don't think he's going to net a true first-round pick. And with that in mind, the Bulls get a little bit of flexibility here, getting a far-out second. It gives them some time to figure out the kind of context of this roster, and it gives them one extra draft capital pick to work with down the road. Again, this helps their trade flexibility just a little bit. They would have Caleb Martin's contract to reroute in another deal later if they want to. Remember, Caleb Martin came over from Philadelphia in that Quentin Grimes trade. So Dallas gets a cost-controlled player here in Lonzo Ball who can definitely contribute to the defense wins championships mantra over there in Dallas, and can also be an impactful connector piece and give some growth opportunities to Cooper Flagg, who's going to demand and take on-ball reps early in his NBA career. Lonzo Ball, of course, one of the biggest growth points for him coming from where he was as a prospect at UCLA to where he is now as a player. It really stems from his three-point shooting and off-the-catch play, off-the-ball play, where he went from a super high-usage player in college to now a very connective piece in the NBA. And I think for Dallas, this helps them in a bunch of different ways. As a two-way player, it helps them defensively, guarding the basketball, matching up with different lineups. In team constructions, it helps them get out and run a bit more as well. Lonzo's obviously a very good hit-ahead passer, connective player in transition, and has really grown as a play finisher. So I think all things considered here for Dallas is a great, great get for them. And Chicago gets some draft capital down the road and another contract that is movable at the deadline if the Bulls want to continue kind of selling and reshaping their team a little bit, as Josh Giddey and Kobe White are the true guards of the future there for the Bulls. Trade framework number 3, and this one has been kind of a staple on the channel now the last couple of off seasons, and it's one that I still think makes a very good deal of sense, especially for Orlando, who probably doesn't have the minutes to go around for all of their draft picks and young players. Making a win now splash trade for them while also saving a little bit of money both now and long term could be very, very sensible. The Magic are a pretty spendy team at this point in time with the Jalen Suggs extension, the Franz Wagner extension, and then an incoming Paolo Banchero extension. I think Orlando has to be counting every single dollar, and they might be regretting that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope contract quite a bit, which is where Portland comes in and kind of bails them out of that situation a little bit. We'll talk about Portland's return here in just a minute, but Anthony Simons coming into Orlando gives them that shot creator that they need, someone who can really shoot the basketball, and I think becomes a dynamic off-ball player when Paulo or Franz has the rock, something that I think the Magic will still continue wanting to grow them in those areas moving forward. But it also gives them a high-volume pick-and-roll ball handler, and that's really the strength of Anthony Simons' game. Put the ball in his hands, he's going to be able to take and make pull-up jump shots, pull-up threes especially, and it's going to punish drop coverage. You think about trying to beat Eastern Conference playoff teams. The Knicks with Towns and Robinson. You think about the Pacers with Miles Turner. You just look up and down the totem pole there in the East. Jared Allen for Cleveland. Like, you need to be able to make pull-up jump shots to win in the Eastern Conference, and that's something Anthony Simons gives Orlando that they really don't have right now. A dynamic on-ball scoring guard who can get his shot off against a variety of defensive coverages. I think it makes a ton of sense for them. I still continue to love this trade package and this trade idea of Anthony ultimately finally landing in Orlando. And the Blazers here, they get KCP, kind of maybe a little bit of a bounce back opportunity for him. Just had a very, very bad season for the Magic. But you look back at what he's been throughout the majority of his career, around good talent, around good teams, he's been super impactful. Could he kind of revert back to the norm of what we've seen for him throughout his career in Portland? I think there's a good chance of that. And he could also function kind of in a mentorship role for them. It is reported right now that the Blazers have interest in Chris Paul. Could KCP be a good veteran addition into their locker room? I definitely think that's a possibility. The Blazers here, part of the reason to trade Anthony Simons, he's going into the final year of his contract, and if the Blazers don't have long-term plans with him being at the heart of their organization for the next 5 years, now might be the time to move off of him, and in return you get a former top 10 pick in Anthony Black, a player who I liked a lot as a prospect coming out of Arkansas. I think gives them a very unique defensive-minded guard next to Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia and Donovan Clingan. I think Black and Clingan together is a very, very fun defensive pick-and-roll combo because of their ability with Clingan to anchor the paint as a deep drop defender, and then Black's screen navigation, really good positional size and length, and the ability to be disruptive at the point of attack and off the basketball. And I think for Portland, this does kind of shore up their backup point guard spot after trading Simons. It looks like it would maybe be a big hole for them, but this gives more opportunity on the ball for Scoot Henderson, and it allows Anthony Black to kind of fill in the gaps around that. Kind of a rebuy option like what we saw with Dyson Daniels, how he kind of really grew his career getting traded from New Orleans to Atlanta. Could Anthony Black find himself in a similar situation moving from the Southeast there in Orlando all the way up to the Pacific Northwest with the Portland Trailblazers? And then additionally here for the Blazers, you get pick number 16. I think this is a very strong package and one for Orlando. Part of the point of making this deal, getting off of KCP's contract, having some significant cap savings in the process, long term, while also getting talent you need now. It is a pretty hefty package. Anthony Black's a good young player that I have a lot of belief in. Pick 16 in this draft can be an impactful defensive-minded wing or a good big man. You look at someone like Asa Newell perhaps, or Rasheer Fleming, Carter Bryant, Neek Clifford. There's a bunch of different players who are going to be in that kind of realm around pick number 16 in this year's class. Portland definitely can use that to draft this year. I think it's a very strong package, one that would get the deal accepted for Anthony Simons to Orlando. Again, you can argue what else should be in this deal, but this framework, I think, is one that makes a lot of sense for both sides at this point in time. Trade framework number 4, and it is a draft pick only trade, one between the San Antonio Spurs and the Los Angeles Clippers. I do want to say this right now, the Clippers are kind of a placeholder. The point of speaking on this trade is to talk about this possibility, specifically with San Antonio, who we saw do a very similar thing last year with the pick that became Rob Dillingham, 8th overall, where they traded that selection to Minnesota for 2 far-out future assets. In this deal, the Clippers basically repeat that, giving up a 2030 pick swap and a 2031 very lightly protected first-round pick to move up all the way into this draft and have a lottery selection. The Clippers have been almost draft pick starved over the last few years, especially in the first round after the Paul George trade, the one that brought him in from Oklahoma City. The Clippers haven't had a ton of shots, especially not in the top 20 of the draft. So this is a real prime opportunity for them. They would still have pick number 30 in this year's draft as well. So it would give the Clippers not only one, but two shots in the first round at finding young players who can be built around core pieces for them moving forward. Part of the philosophy here for the Clippers, with Jeff Van Gundy being the defensive coordinator for them and really building a great team defense. I just mentioned it a second ago with the Blazers. There are some really, really good defensive players in this draft. You look at Drake Powell, you look at Rasheer Fleming, you look at Carter Bryant. There's a lot of potential impact. Noah Esenge, another guy who comes to mind. Could the Clippers snag one or maybe two of those guys in this first round this year and walk out extremely happy with the added youth and revitalization of their roster? They get a little bit more quick, athletic, and it kind of shifts their team dynamic a bit right now in the end of the Harden, Kawhi Leonard era there with the Clippers, and it gives you a good, strong infrastructure moving forward with Zubac still being the long-term anchor of this defense. And for the Spurs, while yes, you do give up pick 14, it's very similar to what they did last year, right? You still get Castle. In this draft, you're going to walk out with Dylan Harper. You still feel very good about the overall situation moving forward, and you pick up future draft capital to work with, allow yourself more flexibility for future trades, or who knows what the Clippers look like in 2030 or 2031. Now, we do have another Clippers package to talk about later. Reminder in this deal, maybe it's not the Clippers. It could be a variety of different teams. Maybe the Lakers are a team to watch moving up for someone like Kamen Maluach or Derek Queen if they slide a little bit in this draft. We'll see what ultimately happens on draft night, but I think this framework is a very fun idea to talk about, and since San Antonio has not one but two lottery picks, I could see them doing something similar to what they did a year ago, where they traded one of their top two picks in the draft in order to maintain and prioritize future flexibility as Wembanyama starts to encroach and get nearer and nearer to his actual prime. Trade framework number 5. This is a deal I like a lot. The Lakers walk away with Goga Bitadze, and the Magic, a team that, again, I talked about earlier, need a lot more shooting. They get Dalton Connect, and they get pick number 55. I also talked earlier about the Magic and their need to save some money. Currently, they are slated to be a first apron team, which is very atypical for Orlando. But if they make this kind of trade where they move Bitadze for Dalton Connect, get a shooter that they could use, and a draft pick at number 55 in this year's class, not very valuable, but it's still a pick nonetheless, the Magic get out of the first apron with this deal. They save a lot of money. They're saving a lot of tax money especially. And for an ownership group that hasn't shown a real willingness to spend a ton of money historically, this not only saves them a lot of money, making it, I think, a realistic framework to look at, but it also makes sense from a roster standpoint. Dalton Connect shot over 59% on twos this past year, over 37% on threes, on over 8 3-point attempts per 36 minutes. He was very productive in his minutes as a scorer. Now, at times there was some high highs and some low lows, but I think Connect could be a very valuable movement shooter, off-ball spacer off of the Banchero-Wagner pairing. And while, yes, it hurts to give up Goga Bitadze, who's had some awesome moments and some great minutes for the Magic, I do think going forward, if they're looking to kind of reinvent their roster a little bit, add better spacing, more shooting around their team, play a little bit faster, Dalton Connect is a guy who can definitely contribute in that way. And I think Jamal Mosley has built the defensive infrastructure there in Orlando to really support someone like Connect being in their rotation, while also, again, saving a lot of money against the cap and getting out of that first apron threshold altogether. Trade framework number 6. We're back to those LA Clippers, and this is a big one. And you can argue this might be too much. There's going to be a lot of arguments in the chat about this one, I'm sure. LaMelo Ball goes from Charlotte to LA. Earlier we talked about Lonzo Ball maybe getting rerouted from Chicago. Now we have his younger brother LaMelo getting traded to the Clippers in what would be a huge game-changing trade and would really give LaMelo the first opportunity of his career to play on a good team with good pieces around him, a lot of existing talent, and to be the long-term successor of the point guard spot behind James Harden, where right now the two of them would share that ball handling responsibility. One of the Clippers' biggest weaknesses this past year, when Harden came out of the game, their offense just fell apart. They just could not get good offense consistently. The process completely diminished throughout the course of the minutes Harden was off the court, because they just didn't have a pick and roll initiator, someone who can consistently bring the ball up the court, deal with ball pressure, and start NBA offense. LaMelo Ball can definitely do that, and he can really score the rock. Now, in LA, is he going to be asked to score at the rate that he was in Charlotte? Definitely not. And I think that's when you're going to get a better version of LaMelo Ball. But you are paying a lot to get him here in this kind of trade. The Hornets get Norman Powell, someone who they could definitely reroute. There's a variety of different teams that would have interest in him. Had a near all-star caliber season this most recent year for LA. And I think Charlotte could really use him as trade bait to send him somewhere else. They get Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's a bit of a spendier contract, but not one that's too long-term. So I think the Hornets could definitely manage eating that contract at this point in time. It's a unique opportunity for the Clippers to get involved on another max caliber player here. And they have 3 tradable first-round picks, technically. They have pick number 30 in this year's draft that they could trade. They have access to their 2030 first-round pick. And on draft night would also gain control of their 2032 first-round pick, which they would trade with a protection on it. And they would also have offered swap option rights on that 2031 first. So Charlotte, who has been kind of in the business of collecting future firsts, they got a 2027 first via Miami for Terry Rozier. They got a 2027 first via Dallas for PJ Washington. Now the head of the snake here, LaMelo Ball, finds his way to Los Angeles in a huge trade, in a game-changing trade that ultimately puts LaMelo in LA and gives the Hornets more pieces to continue rebuilding around. They have pick 4 in this draft. They, of course, have Brandon Miller, who is reportedly the only untouchable player on their roster at this point in time. Could LaMelo get traded this offseason? I'm not sure. If I was the Hornets, I'd be very, very reluctant to trade him. I think he's a core piece for them moving forward. But 3 first-round picks and a swap and Norm Powell and Bogdan Bogdanovic is a pretty persuasive offer that the Hornets would probably have team meetings about and have to really go to the drawing board and figure out the future of this organization, with that new ownership group kind of spearheading things in the rebuilding, retooling direction that they've been over the last 18 months or so. Then we get on to trade framework number 7, and there he is, Giannis Antetokounmpo, in this trade to the Brooklyn Nets, and it factors in a ton of draft capital. In fact, you see 8 first-round picks going to Milwaukee in this deal, and a couple of other picks moving out to New Orleans. Now, part of this, the Pelicans own swap rights with Milwaukee in 2026 and 2027. So as a result, the Pelicans do concede those picks back to Milwaukee. Very similar to what we saw the Nets, Rockets, and Knicks do in that Mikal Bridges trade last summer, where the Rockets gave up back some of the Nets picks in order to get Phoenix Suns picks. And ultimately, New Orleans here is giving back some of those Bucks picks to get a pick in the top 10 in this year's draft at number 8. The Pelicans would then hold pick 7 and pick 8 in this draft, giving them a really good chance to land some real talent in this year's class, whether it be Kon Knippel, Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears, Kamen Maluach, Derek Queen. It would give the Pelicans 2 top 8 picks in this year's class, and they would get their own swap rights back in 2026. So you are trading 2 future Bucks picks, but if Giannis just flat out stays in Milwaukee, you're not getting a lottery pick with those selections. So I think all things considered here, New Orleans definitely walks out smelling like roses if they get the 8th overall pick in the draft for those swap options, assuming Giannis maybe would just stick in Milwaukee without that kind of inclusion of New Orleans in a trade. And for the Bucks, you're getting a couple young players. Derek Whitehead, a former first-round pick who could really shoot the basketball coming out of Duke, hasn't had consistency in his career, has dealt with some injury stuff as well, which has really limited his athletic profile, but he's still a young player you maybe take a swing on here in this deal. Jalen Wilson, another youngish player that honestly I'm not super high on moving forward, but you give him a chance in your rotation. And then Noah Clowney, a definite interesting long-term big man bet for them, who could kind of be a tweener big forward type, shoots the ball quite well from behind the arc. Now his 2-point percentages have been pretty awful throughout his NBA career, and I don't think in Milwaukee it would be much better without, real elite offense initiation around him. But the Bucks, ultimately the reason they're making this trade, they get control of their own future back in the short term in 2026, 2027. They could position themselves for prospects like Cam Boozer, AJ Debonsa, Darren Peterson in next year's draft. They get 3 first-round picks this year at 19, 26, and 27. And then, of course, other future draft capital, some Knicks picks. a 76ers pick. I think all things considered, it's a very strong offer. The Bucks walk out with a lot of draft capital. The Nets walk out with one of the best players in the entire world in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They could bring him into cap space and still keep Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, D'Angelo Russell, Nick Claxton going forward. That's a really solid starting five with a lot of scoring talent and defensive upside as well. When Claxton is really engaged and involved, they'd still have Day'Ron Sharpe off the bench too. They'd have a very well solidified front court. And then the Pelicans, again, you're walking out with pick 8 in this draft, something that I think is a very, very valuable asset for them to be working with as well. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more NBA draft content moving forward. Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.